Hey, do you like a good mystery? So do I. And you're in the right place if you do, because my name is Vin Dacquino. Our guest is a mystery writer, Jim Matessino. Jim, talk to me. You are an author. You wrote a book, a very exciting book. What's the name of the book, and what in the world possessed you to write this book?
Well, the name of the book is Alternate Route.
Mm-hmm.
And I stopped working several years ago, and I tried to continue earning a living through real estate, which just didn't turn out to be for me. And actually, I was sitting around the table with my in-laws, my wife and her parents, and my father-in-law had received a book from Italy, a friend of his from Sicily, who had just written a book. And my wife's mother, my mother-in-law, had mentioned that maybe I should write a book.
Yeah.
And I had dabbled in writing in the past as more of enjoyment and fun, but
more
I
like
never,
high schoolish or
yeah. Well, actually, in
later?
1972, I read The Exorcist in the spring. I think it was the spring.
That thing
of
scared the
72.
living daylights out of me.
Yeah, it had a big impact on me reading that book. I read it in 2 days.
Wow.
It's like a 500-page book.
Yeah.
15, and I got this crazy idea to write a book.
Yeah.
So I got out a pad and a pencil, and I laid on my bed, and I started writing this story about this guy who, young kid, whose mother got sick and needed an operation, and they didn't have the money. So he was going to get his friends together and orchestrate a bank robbery.
Oh, man.
So I'm there with my pad and pencil, and I'm writing, and I got about 10 pages deep, and I was like, this is tough.
Yeah.
So I sort of...
People think it's easy to write a book. It's not easy to write a book.
So I gave up. And then, I wrote papers in high school. I wrote a couple in college that were well received. And I always liked it. And then even in work, 23 years in business, writing emails, I wrote requirement documents, I wrote design documents for computers. I was always around writing. I was practicing without even knowing it, really.
Yeah.
And then I got laid off in 2013, and like I said, I started doing real estate, and it just wasn't for me, and I needed something to fill my time, and my mother-in-law had made that statement and got me thinking about it. I said, let me try it. So I formulated the story in my head, and I started out.
Yeah, and just went to work doing it. Yeah, it's funny where inspirations come from. I mean, you never really know. And sometimes that's all it takes is someone to say, hey, did you ever try writing? And then when you do, you realize, maybe you do have the gift.
Back in 2010 or 11, my son played baseball for the Kent White Sox.
Oh, wow.
And a local sports writer, Skip Lockwood, or no, it wasn't Skip Lockwood. He's an actual baseball player. He was. Skip, I can't remember his last name. But anyway, he would come around the fields and he would take pictures and he would write summaries of the games. And he was going on vacation for 3 weeks. He wasn't going to be around. But he told us that if we wanted to, we could submit the game summaries to the paper.
Did you do that?
And I offered to do it.
Wow.
And
that's an art in itself. That's tough writing.
I really liked it. I enjoyed it. I got a little more creative than he had, but the parents loved it. The kids liked it. Yeah, and my wife thought it was great and thought I could do it. So, and I had written papers in college. I did actually a sports reporter story on. It had to be contrast in style. So I did the Frazier-Ali fight.
Yeah.
And I compared those two contrasting styles to something else. And friends of mine read it, and they thought I should have gone into sports journalism.
I just did a writer's workshop for young writers, and these are high school students. And I tried to help them to understand that, you can't say I can't if you don't.
Right.
You have to try different things. Great novelists discover later that they would have been great poets if they had done poetry instead, and vice versa. So you really have to, there's so many different kinds of writing. And again, you don't know if you can do it until you do it. you ended up writing a mystery. Now, is there any truth in any of this?
In any of the story?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, there are bits and pieces of it that were inspired by actual events that happened to people that I've been told.
And then
or
you
I
run
learned,
with it.
and I use that as some things. But
I love to tell the
change
story
the
about
names to protect.
Oh,
the
I hear you.
protect the
to
guilty.
protect the innocent and
Protect
the
the
guilty. I love to tell the story of the little boy. I was doing a talk at one of the schools, and the little boy called me aside, and he said, "Excuse me, how can you write an exciting story if your life is boring?" And I said, "Don't write about what is. Write about what if." He says, "You mean make it up?" I said, "Yeah. You could take something that really happened and then just make up all the rest of this stuff." He said, "I could do that." I said, "Go ahead." So people don't realize that, it doesn't have to be straight fact. You have to learn how to work this imagination of yours. And for years, you've been taking in information. The real question is, so what do you do with it?
Right.
Now that you have all of this stuff that you've recorded, what are you going to do with it? And if you can create characters that become real enough, they'll tell you what to do with it. Is that what happened here?
Yeah, I would start with an idea, and I would just start. It would just grow every time I went back and edited. It would just grow and more ideas, and I would remember certain things, and it took on a life of its own. Actually,
Yeah, and that's exactly what should happen. I call that zoning. And I was talking to the kids, and I said,
Writer's
"Listen,
trance.
you have
Absolutely.
to learn how to zone," and that means, our education system is sometimes dangerous for writers because young writers get 43-minute English periods. By the time the teacher explains the assignment and gets the kids going, they've had about 7 minutes to get their engines revved. And the bell rings, and then they have to go to math class. And they let it go. And I tell them what you need is sustained writing time, where you lock yourself in a room, close the doors. I mean, it's no big secret. All the people who know me know that I do my writing in the middle of the night. I send them emails at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning because that's when I'm up, and that's the best time.
Well, the writing will take
Yeah,
on the mood.
Yeah.
It'll take on sometimes what you're wearing, the place you are.
You were exactly right. And I'm gregarious. If there's people around, I'm going to pay attention to them,
Yeah, I can't.
not the
write-
work.
I can't write with people.
Middle of the night, the only one there is the cat. And he's a pain in the neck a little bit, but a little bit is not bad. When I'm in front of that computer, there's times I sit at that computer 1 o'clock, and the next thing I know, my wife's tapping me on the shoulder saying, "Do you want breakfast?" And I didn't even realize it got light out. If you can sit for a sustained time, the character will go into your head and take all that wonderful material you have and just run with it. So you wrote a mystery. Is it a murder mystery?
Yes.
Okay.
It is. It's about a young girl, 14, living in California with her father, single parent, and he has her under his thumb, very controlling, very possessive, no computer, no cell phone, none of that. So one day she's doing homework and her pen dries up and she goes searching for a pen, can't find one, and it leads her into his bedroom, which is forbidden, but she figures she has some time. She goes in, starts looking through things, and finds photos of a woman with a small boy that she's in with her father. So it leads her to believe that she has a mother somewhere and a brother. And at the same time, there's legal documents that show that she has been signed over by a woman. Wow. She's been given custody to her father without a fight. So that just gets her going.
So she has a mother and a brother out there somewhere
in New York
that she didn't know about.
She didn't know about. She thought something else had happened to them that he had told her. But and then she decides she's going to leave and she's going to find them. So she saves her money and she takes off. And then at the same time, there's a 30-something freelancer in New York that takes a job from an acquaintance that brings him out to California. And there's something shady about that whole deal, but he's not aware of it. And he runs into her, and he decides to help her back to New York to find find their mother. And it's just the story of what happens.
Yeah.
You know, there's people after him. There's people. Her father's after her, and then what's going on back in New York with some relatives.
And of course, it's a very
interesting.
happy ending. Can't tell me. Don't tell me.
Just like life, right?
Like
happy
life.
ending.
That's right. There was a wonderful book by Robert Cormier called I Am the Cheese. And at one point, the boy is going through a desk looking for something, and there's a piece of paper stuck up inside. So he reaches up and he gets it, and when he reads it, he realizes that his family is in a witness protection program, and that his parents were actually involved in espionage before. And then the story goes on to
You could go
tell
a lot
the
of
story.
places with that. Yeah.
So it's amazing. And that just reminded me of it. That was a fabulous book. This is a good book too, and it's 2 covers.
Right.
Tell me the tale of 2 covers.
Okay, well, I self-published through Kindle Direct Publishing.
Okay.
So I created the cover myself in their software.
Wow.
And it's the original book was...
Now, can we, maybe we can hold this up. Why don't you hold it just like this and aim at that camera right there.
This was the original cover. It's a picture I took up at the Stone Church in Pauling off of Route 22.
Wow.
And I thought it was nice with a path leading into the woods, sort of mysterious.
Yeah.
You know, and it's something I did myself. And it was well received by the people I know. And I put it up on a Facebook group I belong to of writers, and they lambasted me.
Oh, they attacked you.
Yeah, they told me it looked like a hiker's manual or the memoirs of an older
But there
person.
is something mysterious about it.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, that's what grabbed me. I mean, that's why I did it, you know. So one of the people, one of the persons that criticized it offered to help me, which was nice of him. No one else did. And we worked together, and we came up with this one, that cover.
Yeah, very different.
Yeah, which is a
A
little
lot more
more
mysterious.
a little more in line
And
with the
it
genre.
looks a lot more young adult too.
And yeah. And I think book would appeal to a younger audience. Although, you know, older people have read it and they've enjoyed it. So.
All right, now tell me a little bit about. You went the route. You took the alternate route to publishing.
Right.
Rather than go with the traditional publisher, which is sometimes long and tedious, and sometimes hard to crack. Mm-hmm. You know, I have been on record as calling the traditional publishers gatekeepers, because they're in charge of what books get in and what books don't. But lately, we have a new form of publishing. It's not vanity press, and it's not self-publishing. It's publishing on demand, which is a little different. And the idea is that you don't print cases and cases and cases of books, hoping that they sell. And then if they don't, you have to eat them.
Right.
With this, if you order 100 books, they'll print you 100 books. If you order 2 books, they'll print you 2 books, or 200 or 2,000. So the cost stays down. Also, the responsibility of a lot of the production of the book is the author's. So you have to pretty much proofread your own.
Right.
But there are companies that will say, okay, we're basically free to publish, but if we create the cover, it'll cost you this. If we proofread the whole book for you, it'll cost you this. If we market the book for you, it'll cost you this. So a number of writers said, you know, I can put this book on the shelves in 6 weeks. Well, traditional publisher, you'd be lucky if you get it 6 months, maybe a year, maybe more, by the time they finally get done doing what they have to do to get it out there. So it's a different experience, and many writers are now able to get their books to the public. What has your experience been so far in doing this?
Well, going back to the length of time, I was a little concerned with trying to get it traditionally published and then finding at the end that it was a waste of time.
Yep.
Because it took me a year to get through the first final draft, and then I worked 6 months with an editor. You know, she's done writing, she's done editing, and I worked with her for 6 months to get it into shape and get it ready to be put out there. And I was overly excited about it. I really didn't want to spend another 6 months trying to get it published and just be rejected. And so I said, let me put it out there. And I looked into a couple of self-publishing avenues, and I chose Kindle. It's turnkey.
Yeah.
It's really it was really nice.
And it's become easier and easier all the time.
So
I mean, there are companies out there where you literally send them your draft and they do all the rest.
Right.
You know, 5 weeks later, it's in the bookstores. Now, yes and no. Some bookstores won't take a book that comes from a self-publishing company because they can't do it on a contingency basis. So they get stuck with it, so they won't do it. So they will only buy from traditional publishers. So there are problems with doing it that way. It becomes difficult.
Right.
But a lot more of the onus of the book is on the author. Right. And you can concentrate on the book and not necessarily the headache of trying to fight to get a publisher to do it. Right. You send it, they keep it for 6 months, they send it back with a rejection. You send it to another one, or even with an agent. And many times you send it to an agent, and the agent keeps it for 6 months. Then when the agent says, okay, I'll take it, the agent sends it out, and you wait another 6 months to get a rejection. And then a year, 2 years later, now if you're doing a book, I did Kiss the Candy Days Goodbye, it was a book on diabetes. But when you're doing a medical book, you can't fool around because a year later,
it could be irrelevant.
That's right. A year later, things change, and already the book's outdated. So it's important to get it out quickly. Right. Things have changed. You know, the old way of printing books was expensive and timely. I mean, now they're pumping books out with computers like in hours.
The number of books being self-published is very large.
By the thousands.
The competition is incredible.
And you do have to be careful, and I do caution writers out there about self-publishing because they think that all they need to do is type it all up, hand it in, they'll print it out, and you're done. But then you find that there's all kinds of errors all the way through it. And there's a lot of self-published books that are just not finished. And they need a good, solid editing.
I've probably read this book 12 times.
Oh, I read some of mine 20 times, 30 times, and I let other people read them too. And without question, I find at least one error in the book every time. And that's after I've read it, traditional publishers have read it, editors, professional editors, you miss it. And especially if you're too close to it. If you're writing the book, man, you can read the same mistake 10 times and never realize that the word "and" was missing every one of those times. And it happens.
It's true.
I remember a little film clip I used to show my students when I was teaching on Ray Bradbury. And Ray Bradbury was doing an interview with a student. And the student said, Mr. Bradbury, how do you know when your book is ready? And he said, when you can read your book from cover to cover without making one change. And I looked at that and I said, I'll never get published.
It'll never get out there.
I said, I'm done, man.
It'll never get out there.
Yeah, so, you know, and back then,
never done.
I hadn't even published a book yet. It put me into fear. I said, are you kidding? I mean, I read a book 100 times. In the 100th time, I'm still finding errors. That's why sometimes it really does pay to have an editor take a look, or at least getting some other readers.
The experience I had with my editor was fantastic. I mean, I couldn't have done it without her.
I have a wonderful editor now. Yeah.
And the education that I got was, you know, invaluable. I mean, I'm applying what I've learned, plus the books I've read on writing. I've read, you know, a bunch of books on it, and I'm now writing a new one, a second book. It's not a sequel. And I'm applying everything I learned, and I think she's going to be pleased when I ask her to start working with me on it at the end, of how little work she's going to have compared to the amount of work she has.
If you work with an editor enough, in the back of your head, you create a phantom editor. You write something and you go, oh no, I know exactly what she's going to say when she sees this. So you start changing it yourself. That's good stuff. And that's important to do. It's one of the reasons why I enjoy running a writer's workshop. You know you're part of that workshop. And every week we bring writers together and the writers discuss each other's work and make comments. Well, as time goes on, they begin to become some of the people in the group. And after they write it, they go, no, forget it. I know what he's going to say. I know what she's going to say about it. So they make their changes based on what they think. That's good stuff. Yeah. I encourage writers to join writers' workshops. I discourage them from only going to writers' workshops. I have had workshop members who are not writers. They're workshop members. And they've been writing the same book for 10 years.
Yeah.
And you have to learn to get off, you know, and writers write, talkers talk. If you're going to workshops just to talk about your work, you're never going to get published. You have to be able to finish a piece.
Something I take away from a book I read, Stephen King on writing, memoirs of the craft.
Yes.
He said that, you know, the first time you write the book, you sit down with the door closed, meaning no one gets to see it, no one gets to hear about it. You're writing it for yourself. Then you write with the door open, and then it's ready to be shared, and that's when you could bring it to a writer.
I told my students today that writing a book is relatively easy. Working a book isn't. You write the book, but then you have to go in there. I told my writers, never write the first paragraph first. And they say, how do you do that? How can you not write the first paragraph first? You write it, you write your book, and then you know information you didn't know when you started the book.
Right.
So now you go back with the knowledge of what the rest of the book really is going to be. In truth, the book kind of takes its own route.
Yeah.
So you're not 100% sure. So you need to go back with this new information, and then you need to work the manuscript.
The current book I'm working on, I wrote the first 3 chapters, and I wrote the last 3 chapters. And then I went back and I started on chapter 4. And now I just started chapter 11, and I'm like taking notes the whole time, saying, all right, I got to change this in the end, I got to do this, I got to move that. So it does.
I had a writer in my group one time who used to make me nuts because he would write a book, and he would write chapter 1, and then he'd write chapter 12, and then he'd write chapter 4, and then he'd write chapter 23. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are you doing?
How do you know it's 23? Unless
what he would do is he would get an idea of where he thinks it was going to go, and he'd go there. Mm-hmm. And then he'd go back and create the scene that made that happen.
To get there. Yeah.
And it was like, oh my God, which would make me nuts.
But
writers are unique. You need to find your profile as a writer. When do you write? Where do you write? Why do you write? How do you write best? And no one's the same. And the more you write, the better you get.
I have to write first thing in the morning.
Jim, I'm going to blow your mind right now. We're almost out of time. Time goes quickly when you're having fun. Talk to me about this writing experience. Has it been good for you?
It's been a lot of fun. It really has. I think sometimes I have an overactive imagination. I may think too much. So I was allowed to channel that, that whole...
Yeah.
To focus on my book, my characters, my story. I'd walk my dog. I would iron out plot segments, and I would hit barriers in writing the book. Like, for instance, I have a scene in a hotel with a bathroom with a window in the hotel room, and I'm like, what hotel have I ever been? A motel that I've ever had a window in it? And I ended up seeing a movie, and they actually had a window in the bathroom. So I'm like, well, I could do that.
You've been recording material all the time, and it's amazing what's in there. And
it's a lot of fun.
It's not so much what having the material, it's using the material. The material's in there, you have to learn how to get it out. Press the right buttons to get it out. Well, I am very pleased that you are writing. I'm very pleased that you're writing good books for people to read out there. Hopefully they'll read Alternate Route. And your new book, do you have a title for it?
Right now it's just Harold.
What is it?
Harold.
Oh, okay. All right. Any last words for our readers?
Just appreciate the time being here, and I really enjoyed it. And my book's available on Amazon.com, Alternate Route.
Keep in mind that we often understand the importance of exercising our bodies. We also have to understand the importance of exercising our minds. And the best way to do that is through writing. Readers are leaders. Writers are fighters, fighting for the right to be heard. You heard that here. Stay tuned for other great guests. This guest has been absolutely wonderful. Jim, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. Our credits are going to be rolling in a minute, and I can't thank you enough for giving a little bit of yourself to us.